東南アジア、ミャンマー、軍事クーデターが起きたあの日、この国から自由は消え去りました。自由を求め、街頭で抗議の声を上げた市民たちは国軍に拘束され、次々と刑務所へと送られていきました。その行き着く先として知られるのが、ミャンマー最大都市、ヤンゴンにある悪名高きインセイン刑務所です。今回はそのインセイン刑務所で実際に6ヶ月間を過ごした男性にインタビューを行いました。彼がそこで目撃した目を覆いたくなるような刑務所の壮絶な実態とは、元囚人が語る塀の中の真実をお聞きください。現在はですね、ミャンマーの軍政にアートの力で抵抗をし続けてきたというマウンポーさんのお宅にやってきました。Thank you very much. Nice to meet you. Thank you so much. ちょっとじゃあ久保田くんにここはどういう場所なのか、マウンポーさんはどういう方なのか、ちょっと簡単に説明をお願いしてもいいですか？
今マウンポーさんの自宅に来ていて、彼はここでいろいろ子供たちに絵画とか教えたいなとも今しているんですけど、彼自身2021年にクーデターが起きた直後にストリートアートなどで軍に反対するメッセージなどを書いていたんですね。でまたそういった政治的な発言とかがおそらく軍の人に密告をされてしまって、で拘束された経験があります。クーデター直後だったので、運よくも、半年ほどで獄中で過ごした後に解放されたということなんですけど、彼は獄中でもその刑務所の中での様子をスケッチを描き続けていて、それをこっそりとまた持ち出すことも困難だったんですけど、監視者に見つからないように持ち出して、中の様子を伝えるという、非常に大きな役割を果たした人になります。
じゃあ話を聞いていこうかなと思います。Mr. Mampo, thank you so much for your cooperation. Before you came here, what happened to you in Myanmar?
ဆရာဘုန်းအနေနဲ့ဒီမဲဆောက်ဘက်ကိုရောက်မလာခင်မှာပေါ့နော်ဆရာဘုန်းမြန်မာဘက်မှာဘာတွေလုပ်ခဲ့လဲဘာတွေဖြစ်ခဲ့လဲအဲ့ဒါသူ့အကြမ်းပြင်းလေးနဲ့အတူချုံလေးရှင်းပြပေးပါအောင်နဲ့
အဓိကတော့မဲဆောက်ရောက်မလာခင်6လကျွန်တော်အင်းစိန်ကထွက်လာတဲ့6လပေါ့နော်
Before he came to Mesau, he was in Myanmar for 6 months. At the time, because he mentioned this is 6 months, he just released from insane prison. The whole family got arrested and after they released from the prison, there's also the situation is unstable and also they are having the SAC a military dictator have a kind of behavior they want to arrest them again. He found that kind of sign. That's why he have to flee to Mesau.
I heard that he was arrested and he was imprisoned in insane prison. So why was he arrested?
ထောင်ထဲကိုတကယ်ရောက်သွားတာတော့မှန်တိုင်းပြောရလို့ရှိရင်တော့အကုန်လုံးကိုဗျာမကြည်နပ်တဲ့သူအကုန်ထည့်လို့ရတဲ့အနေထား
Honestly, at the time, especially after the coup happened, the people who related with the military or the police, although they are normal people, but because of their relation with the government authorities, they have a power. They can arrest anyone who don't agree or argue with. That's why at the time, Xiapo also one of the person who always make a question, and also they have a kind of argument if they do something. If they, I mean, they is village authorities. If they do something abnormal, he always make a question and always argue with that. That's why they don't like him during the coup. So they inform about him all their families are protesting. They are doing a kind of illegal stuff or something like that. They report to the military and they arrest them. Yes, like that, but Dalan means a kind of spy or something like that. But actually it's they are the whole family is a protest during the spring revolutions, and also they against the government or they against the military or something like that. The village authority report and they arrest and they put them in jail.
The village authority was caught with the government. I mean the military side, or there's no more people.
Yes, it's not normal people a kind of military side. Yeah, village authority a village president, a secretary or something like that.
What did you experience in insane prison, or what did you see in insane prison?
သူကကျွန်တော်အင်းစိန်ကိုရောက်သွားတဲ့ကာလကတော့ဘယ်လိုပြောရမလဲဒီဆန္ဒပြတဲ့သူတွေဖမ်းတာမှာသူကနှစ်နေရာခွဲထားတာနှစ်ပိုင်းခွဲထားတဲ့ထဲမှာ
for
အများစုကတော့
why he was in insane prison is it kind of at the time the military is start arresting for the protester the people who took part in the revolutions that's why they trying to in mass amounts of people they arrest them all together and they put them in the insane prison because of the a large number of people they provide a kind of separated area, especially like the people who arrive to prison were related with the politics or something like that. But for him and like some of the people, like they cannot because like over amount. That's why they were arrested in the main hall of the like insane prison, like with the other prisoners or like that. But the situation at the time is like for the military dictator is the first time like they arrest the people. That's why not much a kind of pressure or like a kind of they torture or something like that. It's like for the first time it's like not much serious like behind. After like for the people who arrest later it's like quite serious and like it's terrible. But for them, even though it is not much like a kind of pressure or the torture or something like that, but it is quite worse already.
Was he in insane prison for half a year? 6 months?
Insane မှာဘယ်လောက်ကြာကြာခဲ့တာ
6လပဲ
6လ
ကျွန်တော်တို့အမှန်တကယ်တမ်းထောင်မကြသေးဘူးတရားရင်ဆိုင်စဲကာလပေါ့တရားရင်ဆိုင်စဲကာလကနေ
It's not like a kind of the judge make a kind of decision or in jail or something, not like that. It's a kind of trial period. But during the trial period, they didn't put in the like cell or like they put directly in the prison like that. But at the time, like it's 6 months.
6 months. Yeah. 6 months is a very long time. So how did you survive, or how did you manage your like mental to survive the life in prison?
तू ကအမှန်တော့အဲ့ဒီနေရာမှာတော့နှစ်ပိုင်းပြောရမှာပေါ့နော်ဟိုနှစ်ပိုင်းဆိုတာကျွန်တော်တို့ကျတော့အထိုက်လျောက်ဟိုဘယ်လိုခေါ်မလဲကြံ့ကြံ့ခံနိုင်တဲ့သဘောလည်းရှိတယ်ပေါ့
For himself, he feel that like a kind of specific age and also he experienced some of the stuff, so like he didn't fear that much about the prison or something. But actually when he arrived to the prison for about 3 days, he cannot eat and or he cannot even go to the toilet because like he kind of handled that situation. He found that most of the people got arrested for the for the revolutions. So that's why like most of the people they cannot tolerate what really experience or something like that. And like he saw that like at the first time when all the people arrived to the prison, there is a kind of specific room because that is kind of pandemic period. So there's a room about like a kind of 30 feet to 180 feet room. Actually that room is like only kind of barely 150 people enough. There's a kind of like a limit. But at the time it's like a kind of summer in April area. It's quite hot. And they put the prisoners, like a prison guard or like a prison authority, put 474 people in the single room. And even the people close each other, and even they cannot wear their shirt or something like that. And it's terrible times at the time.
တော့အဲ့လိုအခြေအနေမျိုးမှာကျွန်တော်ကကြတော့ဒီပကြီးကလည်းအမှန်တော့မရေးတာကြာပြီပေါ့နော်အဲ့ထဲမှာကျွန်တော်ကဒါလေးမှတ်တမ်းသဘောနဲ့ယူချင်တာ
When he arrived to the prison and like with the other people and like during the passing those terrible time, they like kind of they make friend each other and they ask like, oh bro, why are you in the cell or why are you in the prison or something like that, and they asked and he heard about their stories and things that. But for him like for drawing art or like drawing pictures like it's already a long time already, so like but he thought that okay I should do that because like there's no way to spend the time for that in the prison, and okay I should better draw again. And also he started making friend with them and also ask their story and he draw a kind of portrait and also like drawing their pictures like and with the paper, the piece of paper I put available in the prison or something like that. Like that, all the 6 months he like kind of he record like with everyone like who interact with him, and like the people also they happy with that. Even in the cell, like he feel that oh he can make the people happy, and also all the time, almost every day, like he draw their pictures and everything like that. That's why actually he feel that about the 6 month period of in the prison, 6 month period in the prison, it's not that much long. He feel that way by spending his time with drawing.
Maybe paintings motivated him to survive their life in prison. After you were released from insane prison, what kind of activities have you been continuing?
သူကပင်မအနေနဲ့ကကျွန်တော်ကအလုံးမလုပ်တာဝင်ငွေရှာတဲ့အလုံးမလုပ်တာ 10နှစ်လောက်ကျွန်တော်
after they have been released in prison because they have like I mentioned they is like their whole family got arrested even for their like underage son even he also got arrested but it's like only for one day and after that they found out he is a kind of high school students and like they released them for himself for Xiaopo is like he haven't like worked for the income like it's almost like 10 years because like his wife is like quite busy kind of businesswoman and also she is a general manager in a company so like and also is a kind of quite busy so he became a kind of house husband like he is a kind of taking care of the children and other stuff and after that like after they released the prison his wife also lost her job and also like they don't know what to do at the time they discuss about that and like okay like how about we do kind of homeschool for like the kids like because during most of the kids like cannot attend the school during these days and also like I will do something stuff also like that they planning during that time even the village authorities they heard that like or they are released from the prison and they are preparing to arrest them again or something like that after they found out about that for Xiaofu family they found out about that okay we can no longer stay here anymore and then they decided to flee to myself
実際にマウンポーさんが書いた作品獄中にいる間に書いた作品をちょっと見させてもらおうと思います How many paintings did he make in prison?
ဆရာတောင်ထဲမှာဆိုလို့ရှိရင် sketch ပုံနေပုံမောင်းဘယ်လောက်ဆွဲခဲ့ရလဲတဲ့ဆရာ
ထောင်ထဲမှာကျွန်တော်လွတ်တော့ကျွန်တော်ခိုးထုတ်လာတာဟိုလောက်ပါတယ်80နီးပါးလောက်ရှိတယ်
while he was in the prison like he draw about over 200 portrait and sketch drawing for like each prisoners and like when he released he keep and like he hidely keep and like bring out over 70 drawings like he provide like in during the prison like he provide the drawings for the prisoners and after that some of the people they could like took out their photo and send them to their family but some the prison guard like they catch them like about that and also like they destroy them or something like that yeah
実際にちょっと can I see?
Yeah okay
そういえばこれは刑務所の中で受刑者の方たちが本を読んだり昼寝をしたりしているような状況かなと思います。あとこちらは、さっきねものすごい狭い部屋でたくさんの受刑者がいたっていう話がありましたけれどもすごい密集している様子がわかるんじゃないかなと思います。Do you have any episode or memory of someone who you painted?
Yeah, especially there's someone who's still in jail.
ကျွန်တော်နဲ့အတူကြားခဲ့တဲ့သူကတော့ကျွန်တော်ထင်တယ်မကြံတော့ပဲပေါ့နော်အားလုံးလောက်လွတ်လာ
especially the prisoners at the time who got arrested them like together and they put in a prison most of the people at the time they sue with the longest sentence of the like prison time is like 3 years even the people know 5 years or 10 years or something like that that's why most of the people are released from the prison already that's why it's almost most of the people from the pictures that they released from the inside prison he explaining about the papers like they are kind of official papers like from the office of the prison because while he was in the prison like there was a kind of prison guard he trying to ask him to do something his stuff or something like that so that's why he have a kind of family with him so like he go in and he trying to seal some of the paper for drawing or something like that. He got letters, like kind of official letters. Is it kind of official report to the like officers? In the case, they said that we are like measuring the temperature of the prisoners for their health or something, but they never done that. But in the report, like they lie and they report about that. Accidentally, he took that picture for drawing, but on the back he read about that and he knew about that.
これはマウンポーさんがインセイン刑務所の中にいた時に、手にした本らしいんですけど、本自体は恋愛小説みたいなミャンマー語の恋愛小説みたいなやつなんですけれどもここにご自身の肖像画を描いて奥さんもですねこのインセイン刑務所で一緒に捕まっていたんですけれどもこの本を奥さん側に送るチャンスがあったので自分が無事だっていうことと、そのI love you っていうことを伝えるために自分の肖像画を描いてメッセージ書いて奥さんに送るっていうことをしていたみたいですね。 なんかやっぱこういう話を聞くと、なんか昔映画で見たアウシュビッツの収容所の中でもなんか同じようにこうなんとかして奥さんとこうやり取りをするみたいな話とかをね聞いたことが、ビューティフルライフっていう映画とかでねそういうシーンがありましたけれども、なんか本当にそういうのを現代でやっている人がいたんだって、たった数年前にそういうことをやって奥さんとコミュニケーションを取ろうとしている人がいたんだっていうことを知って、ちょっとなんかすごいなんか胸にくるものがありますね。久保田さんもインセイン刑務所に行った時に、その当時の体験を紙に書いてたっていう風に言ってましたけど、インセイン刑務所の中ではそういったこう紙を入手するっていうことは比較的簡単にできたんですか？
僕がいた外国人の房だと比較的容易だったんですけど、そのマンポーさんがいたようなメインジェル、他のミャンマー人が捕まっているようなところだと紙はかなり厳しく制限されていたと聞いていて、でまたそれを入手するには看守のつてが必要なんですね。協力してくれる看守が必要なんですけど、こっそりこう紙を与えてくれたり、あるいはその紙を誰か他の人にこう手紙として渡したりするのも協力してくれる人がいたらできるんですけど、そういった看守がそういったことをしていることがバレてしまって、看守自身が懲罰房みたいに生かされるっていうことも僕は聞いたことがありました。実際にその僕の房にいた看守もなんかいなくなったと思ったら、そういう手紙のやり取り助けたっていうので捕まっちゃったよって言ってる人もいたので。
手紙のやり取り助けるっていうのは監修には何かメリットがあったんですか？その人道的にやっぱこう助けたいと思って助けたのか、それともこうある意味監修を懐柔して仲間にこうなんかちょっと賄賂か何か払うとか。
どっちもあると。その賄賂目的の人もいるし、心は民主派みたいな人もいる。
Almost 5 years have passed by after coup d'etat occurred in Myanmar. Less and less Japanese people are getting interested in what's going on in Myanmar. So what do you want to share? What message do you want to share with Japanese people the most?
အမှန်ကတော့ကျွန်တော်တို့မြန်မာပြည်ရဲ့ဒီမျိုးဒေါ်လာကြီးလို့ပြောရမယ်တကယ်ဒေါ်လာကြီးဖြစ်လာတဲ့
Especially for the Myanmar revolution is like it started in 2021 February. Everyone know that it is because of their like kind of foolish, stupid decisions of a dictator made online. He did that without caring anyone. So like people against that. But actually for the Myanmar revolution is like it started, it fertilized even since after they like they free from the like English colonization or something like that. Even long time ago, the military, especially Myanmar military, they're trying to seize the power of the country, or they're trying to, like, always trying to press the democratic teams and the people. That's why it started. The feeling are started already, and now in the Spring Revolution, the people explode about that. That's why, like, in the message, he said like the revolution is like it's long time ago already. Although the people counted 5 years, but like it's over than that. For the people who really want the right and the truth, they stay going and they stay walking and they stay like risking their life and their death, like they don't care. They stay keep going. That's why like injustice of the dictators is quite obvious. That's why like all the people shouldn't stand with dictator. Silence is like a kind of the same side of the dictator. So please believe that all the revolutionaries are like stay walking and stay doing, and they strongly believe in their mind that Myanmar revolution definitely will win.
Thank you so much for your cooperation. Thank you so much. Thank you.
実際に軍に拘束された当事者の声を聞くことで、軍の支配下にあるミャンマーで人々がどのような思いで生きているのか、その壮絶な現実が伝わったのではないでしょうか。皆さんがこの動画を見て何を感じたか、ぜひコメント欄で教えてください。ミャンマーは歴史的、経済的、そして政治的にも日本と非常に深い関わりがある国です。だからこそ最も大切なのは関心を持ち続けることだと私は思います。もし今回の動画を通じてもっと深く学びたい、自分に何ができるかを考えたいと思った方は、私が運営するオンラインサロンシナジーを検討してみてください。今回の取材を案内してくれた久保田徹さんを招いた勉強会も過去に開催しており、今後 一連の動画公開に合わせて再び企画したいと考えています。サロンへの参加は私の取材活動への直接的な応援にもつながります。少しでも気になった方は概要欄のリンクからホームページをチェックしてみてください。ミャンマー取材の動画はまだまだ続きます。次の動画も見逃さないようチャンネル登録もよろしくお願いします。ということで今回も最後までご視聴くださりありがとうございました。また次回の動画でお会いしましょう。